call to order the June 6th meeting of the Santa Barbara City Council Finance Committee meeting. Councilmember Dominguez is not able to join us, so it's just Councilmember White and I. Do we have a presentation about the first item on the agenda, which is our home tenant-based rental assistance grants?
Yes, sir. Good afternoon. I'm Deirdre Randolph, Community Development Programs Supervisor. The city receives home tenant-based rental assistance grants and currently has approximately $572,000 of those funds that can be used for property acquisition, new construction, rehabilitation, and tenant-based rental assistance, which is the topic of my presentation today. The TBRA program is very similar to Section 8. Qualified recipients receive rental assistance so that they can rent market rate units. TBRA funds can be used for utility and or security deposit payments for up to 24 months of rental assistance, and qualified recipients are very low-income households, including households at imminent risk of becoming homeless or homeless households. The annual income limits are established by HUD, and it's based upon household size. A single person currently would make a maximum of $35,400 annually, and a four-person maximum would be $50,520. As of June 15th, those amounts are going up a little bit. TBRA administrators qualify applicants and then issue eligible households a housing voucher for them to select a rental unit, and then the administrators inspect the unit to be sure that it qualifies as it meets housing quality standards set by HUD. The administrator also reviews the rent to be sure that it's reasonable based upon the size, location, and condition of the property. They do review the lease to be sure that the lease doesn't have any provisions that are not allowed by HUD. And then the tenant and the landlord enter into their rental agreement or lease, and rental payments are paid directly to the landlord. The tenant pays a portion of that, 30% of their monthly income, and the rental subsidy covers the difference. Up to 10% of these grants may be used by administrators to offset their cost to qualify applicants or inspect the units. Counseling and case management is provided to all TBRA clients, but the cost for that must be paid from other funding sources. So last February, the city issued a notice of home funding availability, and we asked interested nonprofit organizations to submit letters of intent. We received 5 letters, and of those, we asked 4 applicants to submit full applications. Each one of those were for TBRA funding. Our evaluation criteria was to target populations to be served, the experience and expertise of the applicant, and their ability to provide case management and counseling. The results of our evaluation are that we recommend $250,000 to New Beginnings, $154,000 to Transition House, $100,000 to the Housing Authority, and we're recommending that the PATH grant agreement be extended 1 year. Each of the proposed programs target different populations, meet HUD requirements, and satisfy the housing needs and priorities as identified in the city's 5-year consolidated plan and our annual action plan. The first program I would like to discuss is New Beginnings. We're recommending a new $250,000 TBRA grant for New Beginnings to assist homeless, vehicular homeless, and homeless veterans. This is the first time New Beginnings has received a city TBRA grant. However, they do have the experience and expertise to administer it. They've been managing the Safe Parking Program since 2004 and administering the supportive services for veteran families since 2013. They anticipate serving 40 households over the 2-year term of the grant agreement, and their service will include case management, job training, crisis intervention, and counseling. Our next program that we're requesting funding for is Transition House. We're requesting $154,000 be added to their existing TBRA grant, and we want to extend that for 2 additional years. Transition House targets low-income families with children who are homeless or at imminent risk of becoming homeless. The city has provided Transition House 2 previous TBRA grants, which they have successfully administered. They've served 69 families consisting of 83 adults and 118 children, and 64 of those households, or 92%, have retained their housing. They anticipate serving 22 to 28 additional households with these funds, and they provide a minimum 6-month case management program that covers household finances, accessing entitlements and community-based resources, career development, and life skills. The next program is the City Housing Authority. We're requesting additional funding to their TBRA agreement in the amount of $100,000 so that they can assist chronically homeless individuals and families. Of course, the Housing Authority has been providing rental assistance to the community for over 48 years, and they've been a participant of city TBRA funding since 2012. To date, they've served 57 households, and of the 50 that are no longer receiving assistance, 31, or 62%, have retained their housing for an average of 30 months. I just wanted to point out the 62% is highlighted because there was an error in your printed agenda report. Housing Authority provides case management through its Supportive Services program. They anticipate issuing housing vouchers to approximately 10 additional clients who are on their Section 8 waiting list, including those on the vulnerability list with a need for intensive wraparound services. And last, I want to discuss the PATH Santa Barbara recommendation. We're recommending that their grant agreement be extended 1 year. PATH targets homeless persons or persons at imminent risk of homelessness who have a steady income stream, such as from a job or SSI benefits, but they don't have the upfront money in order to rent an apartment. So PATH provides security deposits and or up to 6 months rental assistance combined with case management. I wanted to explain that the TBRA agreement was executed at the same time that PATH was going through its merger with Casa Esperanza. And due to that and staff turnover, the implementation of the TBRA program was somewhat delayed. Nevertheless, they have had 32 housing placements, and 95% of those have retained their housing. They do anticipate meeting their initial goal to serve 95 individuals by July of 2018 with the extension. So we're asking that you recommend that council approve a total of $504,000, allocating $250,000 to New Beginnings for a new 2-year agreement, TBRA agreement, allocating $154,000 to Transition House and extending their agreement by 2 years, and allocating $100,000 to the Housing Authority and extending their agreement by 2 years. Committing these funds will satisfy home grant-specific commitment deadlines. In addition, we request that you have asked council to approve extending the PATH agreement for 1 year, appropriate $77,856 from home reserves, increase the home revenues and appropriations by $1,949, and authorize the Community Development Director to execute agreements and related documents. So that concludes my presentation. We have lots of representatives in the audience, including, I won't name everybody, but Rob Fredericks from the Housing Authority, Christine Schwartz from New Beginnings, Kathleen Bauschke from Transition House, and Tessa Madden from PATH. So we're all available to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you very much for the presentation. That was very helpful. Are there any questions at this point? Or do you want to hear?
Mr. Chair, thank you. I'm feeling a little lost in the overall, and this wouldn't probably be for today, but to back up and get a sense of what Section 8 is about these days. I know we've had cutbacks at the county with mail, but somehow to get up a little higher and see, what it is that is the total package. And so, I mean, it isn't a criticism about what's being proposed today. It's just that I'm not feeling oriented on total perspective there. And also, I'm always curious about what other communities, are other communities doing their fair share in this as well. I just appreciate hearing about what Carp and Goleta and the county are doing as well. So those are questions that are raised by this obviously good work here that's going on.
Well, ironically, I think we have the people here that could answer those questions if we wanted to get a little bit to that. Mr. Fredericks, you want to start and talk about this particular application, then maybe give some perspective to Councilmember White's questions?
Sure. Thank you. Chair Hart, Councilmember White, Rob Fredericks with the Housing Authority, City of Santa Barbara. As Ms. Randolph mentioned, we administer the Section 8 program, and we bring into the local community about $24 million per year, which is actually a pass-through rental assistance to the local landlord community to help those that are eligible for housing assistance pay their monthly rent. And you've seen my emails recently with the budget that was passed for this current federal fiscal year that we've had to stop issuing vouchers because Congress hasn't appropriated enough money to actually fund all vouchers that are in use. So in order to protect the vouchers that are in use, we can't reissue them as they come back to us. So an important stopgap for us is the home tenant-based rental assistance program, because we can't, without being able to issue tenant-based vouchers, we can't get people who are suffering from homelessness, either in the shelters or on the streets, housing assistance. With this home TBRA, we can continue our work of getting people off the streets and get them housed, which is actually more cost-effective than leaving them on the streets. So that's been a big help for us, and the program's flexible enough for us to be able to immediately go out and get people eligible that are suffering from homelessness, that have been identified as highly ranked on the vulnerability index list. As was mentioned at the special city council meeting back in April on the point-in-time count on homelessness, there's about 790 homeless in the city of Santa Barbara. And so there's a great need to get people off the streets and get them housed. I know the county the county of Santa Barbara also has a home TBRA program that they have issued to the County Housing Authority and other organizations to also assist with rental assistance, helping this population out. So I know other communities are doing it both in the county with the resources that they have, and other communities in the state also have utilized their home program for tenant-based rental assistance.
So $25 million a year, you said, or at least
about just over $24 million a year.
And you're seeing that being reduced
yes.
to
Well, right now
We don't know yet, of
we
course.
don't. This current year, we have a proration of about a 2.5% reduction.
Okay.
From the previous year.
And how many people does that end up helping, or how many people?
Well, our budget authority is for on that 24 million or so per year is for serving 2,366 households.
Okay. Neat. And then this program is a federal program, and maybe describe that a little
Sure.
bit.
The Home Partnership Investment Act, I think, was passed through the Cranston-Gonzalez Act of back in '94, which instituted the home program. And it's federal monies that come to local participating jurisdictions like cities and counties, and then the city and cities in those jurisdictions can then allocate those funds for capital for building new affordable housing, and also for rental assistance, home tenant-based rental assistance, like what's being proposed here and what's been utilized for the past several years.
And then are all of the people that are benefiting from this? Is this for for entities within the city of Santa Barbara, or is this? I know that New Beginnings reaches out beyond the city boundaries. How does that interplay?
Well, for our program, our grant was amended to allow us to serve the homeless that we have in the city of Santa Barbara. If there's a housing opportunity on the South Coast, they can be served on that, because we look at it as one rental market on the South Coast. And with the rental vacancy rates as low as they are and the availability, it's nice to be able to say sorry, other than say sorry, you can't lease up outside the city, to have them be able to have a home that's just outside the city limits. So we do serve those that are in the community, but they may end up ultimately renting outside of the community, outside Santa Barbara city limits.
Another question of staff at this point, and that would be there was the choice made not to invest in infrastructure with this money. So I appreciate hearing a word about that.
Chair Hart, Councilmember White, Sue Gray, Community Development Business Manager. We have historically used our home funds for capital development of new affordable housing projects, but as you might recall from our budget presentation, we had a 68% reduction in this funding about, I want to say, 6 years ago. So we went from the 800,000s, we're now down to like 300,000 a year. We also have spending deadlines, commitment deadlines, and spending deadlines. So in order for us to have enough home money built up to actually help a new housing development, we wouldn't meet our commitment and spending deadlines just because the money has gone down so much. And so at that time, we started looking into the tenant-based rental assistance use, and we found that it's a really good utilization of these funds.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
And maybe just to follow up on that, just so I understand too as well. So over the 23-year arc of this program, most of the time we had been doing investment in affordable housing projects.
Correct.
Just in the last few years has this shift occurred. And it's sort of a twofold. Number one, the need is becoming more and more urgent, and the criticalness of having this money to place homeless people in housing, supportive housing, it's kind of been better understood and makes more sense from a tactical standpoint. But also, as the money for affordable housing projects has shrunk, the opportunity to use it in that way has also shrunk.
Correct.
Okay, so this is sort of a naturally evolving thing, and it's hard to see changing that dynamic given the current funding structure. We're likely to be continuing down this path with using this money for tenant-based rental assistance for
Correct.
the foreseeable
and
future.
At this point, we're hoping we continue to get this smaller allocation. As you also might recall, the president's budget eliminates home funding totally.
Totally.
So we're hoping as it goes through the House and the Senate that it will survive
Yes,
even this
that's
small amount.
more than critical. Okay, thank you for that additional information. Should we keep going with the folks, the public speakers? Ms. Bauschke, do you want to come up next?
So thank you, Chair Hart and Councilmember White. Appreciate the ability to speak to you about our TBRA program. And as you heard with Ms. Randolph's presentation, much of this funding is being used to help homeless households. Transition House focuses on families with children, and we are using TBRA in order to get people out of our shelter program quicker, give them some assistance to get into housing, and then provide subsequent case management for the first several months while they're housed to help them gain financial literacy skills, increased income from employment, and other things that will allow them to be self-sustaining after our ability to intervene with TBRA funds are exhausted. And it is important, particularly in light of what Mr. Frederick said regarding Section 8 funding. We don't have those opportunities currently for families that are becoming homeless. So we need this time to be able to help them gain the skills that they can in order to be self-sufficient. I will say, of course, not every household is the same when you use the word homeless. There's quite a variety that makes up that demographic, including a number of folks that are on fixed incomes because of disabilities and can't do some of the things that our project might like increase income through employment because they can't work. So TBRA is also very important to them to help get them back into housing and stabilize. Do you have any questions?
Thank you. Are there any questions? Thank you very much. Appreciate that. And that's really helpful to help us understand how each of these different programs is serving a different client base. And that's part of how it works together well. Thank you. Ms. Schwartz?
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chair Hart and Councilmember White. This is our first opportunity to have TBRA funds, and to give you an idea of the impact that this kind of funding can make. In our safe parking program, we shelter 150 people every night, and in the past year, we literally have had no rental assistance funds until a small amount of money became available in February. And that means that, every single person that we're trying to assist, we have to, try to put money together from different local organizations. We have to go out of pocket, and being able to provide a security deposit and an initial couple of months' rent to get somebody into housing and off the street and stabilized has far greater impact and outcomes in terms of helping them find employment, helping them obtain benefits, helping them to be able to get to a place where they can maintain and sustain housing over the long haul. Having this type of assistance is crucial to that. With our veterans program, veterans are afforded many more benefits overall in general. We're able to match these funds with $100,000 from the VA, and that is still not enough of money to help people. And we typically run out of funds 8 or 9 months into the grant year with rental assistance. And again, we're scrambling to try to piece money together to continue to house people for the remainder of the year. This allows us to match that and to help continue to house veterans. And while we do serve veterans countywide, as I understand, the grant is from Gaviota to the end of the south border in the county. So we would use VA funds for any housing that would be outside of that area for veterans. And in the veterans program, we also work with prevention, which obviously is different with safe parking because they're already considered to be homeless. And then in addition, with both programs, we do street outreach and try to connect with people who are either newly homeless or chronically homeless and connect them with services either through our agency or one of our partner agencies. So we're very excited about this because this really opens up a lot of opportunity for us to help people quickly.
Great. Thank you very much. Any questions from Ms. Schwartz? Thank you. Ms. Madden?
Thank you, Chair Hart and Councilmember White. I don't have too much prepared, but I did want to echo the sentiments of my colleagues in saying that this funding is critical for us, especially with the housing market as it is and with the landscape of homelessness as it is, to be able to have these critical, quick solutions to moving people off the streets and into homes. I think it's specifically for our program, unlike some of the other programs, we focus our TBRA funding specifically on kind of those quicker to serve, lower barrier homeless individuals who we can really take in, move off the streets and into homes much quicker, and maybe open up space within our shelter programs. So they're the folks who might be coming into the shelter who we can shorten their stay in the shelter and move out and into a more permanent solution much quicker. Or we're also serving folks that aren't necessarily ever staying within our shelter doors, but they're folks that are out on the streets, and we can really kind of use a housing first approach in getting them into housing wraparound services there, and make sure that they retain that housing. So I think this funding is specifically critical as this county and as this city is shifting to kind of a more housing first approach. I think this type of rental assistance and funding for all of our organizations is particularly important. So we're grateful, and as I think Ms. Randolph did a great job of mentioning, kind of our specific situation, but we're grateful to have this funding, and I anticipate we'll actually use it much quicker than July of 2018, but we'll be glad to be able to continue to use it in the coming months. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Jim. Any other questions?
Maybe I'd like to learn a little bit more about the program itself. So does the city of Santa Barbara, or the city, or is it the housing authority that, no, it must be, here we are allocating it. Where does the money come from? Who applies for the overall amount, and how did, perhaps?
I will try to answer that. Each year, the city actually applies for these home funds through its action plan. And so the federal government first funds the city, and then the city reallocates those funds to the various administrators.
Okay. And do you know whether the other South Coast cities have these programs?
I don't actually. I don't know. Maybe Sue does. She apparently does.
The County of Santa Barbara receives funding. We're an entitlement jurisdiction, which means that we get our money based on a formula. And as Ms. Randolph said, we have to apply for it through our annual action plan. The County of Santa Barbara is also an entitlement jurisdiction, and they, I believe, are in a consortium, and they give monies to the City of Carpinteria. I'm not sure if Goleta gets their own or if they're in the consortium, and Lompoc.
Okay.
So their amounts are much less. I do know that the county proper, they do give some of these monies for tenant-based rental assistance.
Okay.
So it's similar to the community development block grant funds. It comes from housing and urban development.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
And I had another question, too. You initially said that you put out a request for proposals and you got back 5. What was the one organization that you chose not to fund?
It was a housing provider requesting rehabilitation funds, and the city had already provided them funds from 2 different funding sources. The ticket here is the timing, and those rehabilitation projects were delayed through no fault of the applicant, but they were delayed, and we felt that they wouldn't meet the timeliness requirement if we gave them home funds.
Okay. And then how does the staff decide the amounts based on these very different programs serving different clientele with different approaches? How do you decide on the allocation of these funds and make your recommendation?
It was basically based upon what they had requested, and we knew what funds we had available. We wanted to, we actually wanted to get New Beginnings into the program, and so they had requested, I believe, $256,000. So we kind of called everything down so that we could end up with our amount that we had available. And the existing programs still had some funding in their balance, so we could utilize those funds and then go forward.
Well, I think the New Beginnings story is pretty remarkable that you've been able to do this work without this funding all this time. And I don't know whether city staff approached New Beginnings or New Beginnings approached you, but however it happened, it makes a lot of sense to. Oh. There we go. And I know you all work together very closely and are collaborators all the time in trying to make this work in a severely resource constrained environment. So we really appreciate the work that you do. We wouldn't be able to serve these folks without your help this way. And then the only other thing that I guess I would ask in the future is that, and this may be hard to do, is that as we're transitioning to this being the primary focus of these funds, if there could be any kind of metric that is consistent across the programs, or at least tries to get to some kind of measurement of efficacy. I don't want to be, pedantic about that. Measuring to the test is a big problem with everything, but the different ways everybody is gauging success makes it difficult for us to understand this in context. And it would be helpful for you all to collaborate and think about what's the best way to describe this in terms of, how difficult the clients are to serve. They need more assistance. They need, their expectations of success is different for this client base versus that. Anything you could add to help give us some tools to better understand the work that you're doing would be helpful. And that's the challenge for staff too. So.
And I chime in on this. That you mentioned the sort of the cousinhood to CDBG that this effort seems to be, and we're not getting any input from the Human Services, and I never remember the multi-syllabic name of that commission, but it would seem to me that this is a candidate for getting that. If the timing, I can see timeliness getting to be a problem in certain situations, but in others where just the questions that you're asking, Mr. Chair, would be applicable. It would be similar to what goes on at the CDBG Human Services grant process, and that might be a little more transparent, public way to get those kinds of questions that you were just asking looked at.
Food for thought for the next cycle, and something you all can collaborate on and decide. There's always a challenge in preparing grant applications and going through that process, and the time and the staff resources is spent doing that versus the cost to that, the time and the resources to prepare that. So I'm sensitive to that. I understand what you're saying. Might be helpful, but it could also
slow things down
and cost time and money.
So I'll move the staff recommendation, Mr. Chair.
And I'll second it. And all those in favor. Actually, is there anybody else that wanted to speak on this item at all? Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No. Is there anything anybody else in the audience would like to speak about that isn't on the agenda? And I know there's no one in the room to do that. So we'll close that part of the meeting, and we are adjourned. Thank you very much.